there's a lot on women these days, a lot of things that we can do, and we don't have to do it all.
Welcome to Mom Boss Central. I'm your host, Alexia Hoffman. This podcast is where entrepreneurial moms like you and me come together for real and raw conversations filled with practical tips, genuine stories, and a whole lot of girl power. But it's not just about listening, it's about building a community. If you haven't already, make sure to join at mombosscentral.com. So whether you're sipping on a cup of coffee, pouring yourself a glass of wine, or tuning in on the go, get ready to join the conversation and become part of our supportive Mom Boss Central community. All right, Michele, welcome to the show. I am so happy to have you on. I'm here with Michele Riechman, and she is going to tell you a little bit about herself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I am a mom of 4. My kids right now range from 6 to 16. I'm also a military wife, so we have moved quite a bit, and that's another thing I love about building a business online. And I also have my doctorate in physical therapy. But a couple years ago, I started my own business doing online personal training, health coaching, and teaching yoga so I can have this business that moves with me and also have more flexibility in what I'm doing and how I'm spending my time so I can also show up for my kids, but also feel this passion that I really have for helping people to get healthy.
I love that. Wow, you are doing so much that is relevant to this community. So I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. So tell us a little bit more about the time frame of when you started your business in relation to when you had kids.
Yeah, so I had all my kids. So I had all 4 of them. And I got a yoga certification. So this was like during COVID. And I'm like, they switched where you could actually do it online. So it was like way, way, way cheaper. So I'm like, I'll just get it and see what happens. So I got my certification. And then I'm like, well, I can add on personal training. Like I have a degree in physical therapy. I know way more about exercise than most personal trainers.
Yeah.
So I just slowly started this online business and it transformed. And I've always had this passion for health and wellness. Even when I was in college for physical therapy, I was a personal trainer. And even to myself, after having 3 kids, I struggled with my own health, like keeping it simple. I was going up a flight of stairs out of breath, like something has to change. And I need to keep it simple and still be able to take care of myself and take care of these kids and do everything. And we're just such in this diet driven culture that it can be really hard to come back to these basics, come back to these healthy habits. So I have a strong passion for doing that and sharing that with people.
Definitely. That's so great. And yeah, I think what you said about, walking up a flight of stairs and feeling winded is like so eye-opening. I know for me, I was a college athlete for a year. I came out and played lacrosse on scholarship, and after that, when I left, that transition away from being an athlete and like losing that part of my identity was like so freeing, but also so paralyzing because I had, I had to work out for so long. It was part of who I was. I didn't think about it. It was just something I did. And then to have that freedom to say, okay, I don't have to do it anymore, but what do I want to do to stay healthy was such a strange transition. And again, with having kids, it's that similar freedom of, or being paralyzed of, I don't have to work out, right? I'm chasing kids around, but I want to, and my time is so limited. So how did you go back to implementing that? What was something simple that you did to dip your toe back in the water after having kids and trying to get back into, yeah, I love so much of what you just said, but to go back, I mean, you spoke about the burnout you felt and then how you found a solution that worked for you. And it wasn't necessarily a conventional, like, okay, this is the fix. It was trying to navigate like, okay, I feel burnt out. I need to change something. What can I do? And how can I try to make these changes? So for you, I think a lot of the time, I think somebody listening needs to hear that you have 1 child, you still homeschool, 3 go to school, and you're getting to do your business, which fills your cup. I think like That is so huge because a lot of the time it feels so black and white. Like I either have to give up my business or have to send all my kids to school, and it can feel so paralyzing. Especially in that season of burnout. I think we don't think as clearly when we're burnt out and we're
Mhm.
feeling that stress and isolation of what's the wrong decision. I don't want anyone to think I'm failing per se. So I love, love, love that you were able to find a solution that works for your family and do something for you still, running your own business and tapping into your own health and making that a priority, even in a season where it would have been so easy to try to minimize your needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we always need to like reassess and relook what's going on week by week, but month by month, or like school year by school year if we
Yeah,
have kids in school. And for me, for this school year for my kids, one of the things I've done is I try to have 1 day a week where I can get caught up on housework. I also try to like go walk with a friend or play pickleball, like go do
I love
something
that.
fun because I am not great about incorporating fun into my
Yeah.
life, but I need it. But also just have that time, like, as a mom, we still run our household. Most of us, we have to keep it we're the ones in charge of keeping it clean. We're the ones in charge of, like, scheduling basketball
Mm,
lessons or, like,
yeah.
all these extra things, and they, like, add up, and it's a lot of pressure, so I knew for this season, for this year, I needed some boundaries where I could, "Okay, I'm gonna clean this day. I'm gonna take care of this for my son or this for my daughter," and it's on Tuesdays because it was bleeding into my work days,
Mm,
and it made my work days feel really long
yeah.
because I was doing home stuff, mom stuff at that time. So for this season, I needed to like separate those a little
I
bit,
love that.
and it's made it feel so much better.
Yeah, that is so great and so tangible. I think that I love that. I feel that I also have gone through different seasons where I have to have like time blocks in my work week for my personal stuff. For me, it's, my lashes, my nails, my toes, because I felt too like this guilt and shame around trying to find time to do it during the week, but for my family system, it doesn't really make sense for me to go on a night or a weekend because we have childcare during the week, and it's a lot harder for me to get help outside of my husband, and to not be away. It for me, I felt guilt if I wanted to go on a night or a weekend, because I wanted that time with my husband and my kids. So,
Mhm.
to put that into my schedule in a way that felt good and not like I was rushing to go and taking away from my workday. So, yeah, I think that's such a tangible thing that we could implement, for some of us, not everybody, but to have like a time block for yourself within that work week where maybe your child's care is already situated and you don't have to think about it, but to also give yourself the ability to be more present in the hours that you are working, because I think that's such a huge piece of it.
Yes. Yes, I love you brought that up because what that has made me do as I have shrunk my work hours a little bit is I need to be very intentional with those hours.
Yeah.
Like, what is working for my business? I mean, I have a master to-do list. I have stuff that repeats every Monday. I'm doing this every Wednesday. I'm working on that.
Yeah.
And when you have some of those systems in place, you can become a lot more productive
Mhm.
in that time you have to work and a lot more focused too.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I have seen that when my husband will say like, "Hey, I got the kids, come home an hour later." It's like I get more done in that 1 hour of like bonus time, that like crunch time, than I did all day because I know I have like a hard stop. It's like I feel so lucky to have that space. I'm like, I'm going to get as much done as possible. Where throughout the day, it's so easy to get distracted or pulled away from the task I was originally going for because it feels like, oh, I have the whole day. So to be intentional with that time when you know it's so limited, but it's also uninterrupted and you can stay focused because tomorrow is your day to deal with all those other household
Yes.
to-dos, personal to-dos, whatever that may be. I think that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for you juggling all of the things with business and kids, and you also are a military spouse, can you talk a little bit more about how the transition was for finding time for yourself, for your business, while still keeping up on all of your other responsibilities?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that idea of reevaluating each season, each month. I mean, each week I'm really looking at my schedule and what I have,
Mm,
and also trying to not only think about my business priorities, but my family priorities. So, one of
yeah.
my things that I'm working on is each week to make sure I have one on one conversations and connections with each of my kids
Mm,
because the youngest is 6, but then they're 11, 13, and 16.
mm,
And they get a little harder to talk to and really connect with because it's for me, it's easier when they're little and you can like play with them, go on a bike ride.
yeah.
Like now they don't want to do some of that
Yeah,
stuff.
definitely.
So being very intentional to connect with them. So that's like in my planner. So I think it comes back to the idea of being intentional and really having systems in place where you can get things done in your house. Like I wasn't always like this, but right now this season, every Tuesday is laundry day for me. Every Thursday is mopping the floor.
Mm,
And that helps to keep these systems on repeat so I don't have to think about some of the stuff and things don't get out of control. And that helps me to balance and then to be able to reassess each week, each month, what do I really need to focus on? And thinking about these different areas of our life. How is my marriage? What do I need to focus on there?
yeah.
Parenting, what about my health? What about my nutrition or my exercise or spirituality? What are these different areas? So being able to have time to look at that so you can be more in alignment
Mhm.
with how you want to live and also giving yourself grace because we're not perfect. We can't do it all.
Yeah.
There's a lot on women these days, a lot of things that we can do and we don't have to do it all.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's huge. And like you said, that alignment is such a big piece of knowing why we're doing what we're doing. And when we're intentional and it is in alignment, I think that's when we can be most productive and most fulfilled. And so to also be a model of that for our kids, and having that intentional
Mhm.
time with them and also having them know that you're doing things that you're passionate about and that's important also. I think that's just such a big piece of being a mom and an entrepreneur is to prioritize our self-care in a way that makes sense. It's not always going out and getting your nails and toes done. It's talking to your kids about going after what they're
Mhm.
passionate about, even if it doesn't make sense or it's not the easy choice. Because I think as entrepreneurs, a lot of the times we have to make a difficult choice to pursue something for ourselves, especially with the responsibilities that come with the household and being a mom. Prioritizing your health.
Yeah, it started with this idea, like, right, going up a flight of stairs doesn't take long. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have to do a 30-minute or hour workout. I don't have to run a 5K.
Yeah.
So it really started with 10-minute workouts, exercise wise.
Mhm.
And I still sort of stick to that. I do between 10 to 30-minute workouts. That's about it. Sometimes I do walk or bike ride longer, something like that, more
Yeah.
a movement thing. But exercise, I keep really short. And that's what I bring to my clients. We're in such a sedentary culture where here I am, we're sitting at the computer. This is what I do a lot of the days. So I have to really be intentional to get up and move and to exercise. And I liked how you also brought this little piece of tuning into your body. You didn't
Mhm.
quite say it like that, but I think when we're younger, we just tend to push ourselves or very driven. But as we get older, we can come into this place of really tuning into our body. Like, what do we need when we're thinking about our businesses? Like,
Yeah.
being able to pause and tune into what we need to do. And when we can expand that, everything fits and feels a lot better too.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that is so important to acknowledge that what once felt good might not feel good now. Like I know in a season I loved weightlifting and for me now, like the thought of weightlifting, I feel like I'd break my back if I just tried. I mean, I've had 3 kids in 18 months. My body is not what it was when I was in high school and college and that's okay. And I think it's for me now doing a 15-minute dance workout really gets me sweating and I can do it with my kids and that's okay. But I think if I held on to the belief of like, I need to go back to deadlifting 300 pounds, I'd probably one, hurt myself, but two, not feel good about it because it's not what gets me excited anymore for the current season I'm in. So I love that perspective. And I love that you are implementing that with your clients is that those short feel good things that you can do to move your body to work towards health and away from the sedentary culture, but not forcing a big intense workout. So yeah, I think what you had said before was you were, you had gone to school, you'd done a lot of school, and then you transitioned to entrepreneurship. Can you speak a little bit more about what that transition was like? Did you work were you in the home full time? Were you working out of the home?
Yeah, so I was actually homeschooling my kids. So that was my full-time job. Um, and so it was really bumpy
Mm,
because that takes a lot of time to homeschool the 4 kids, and we would
yeah.
do co-op one day and lots of things going on. So and when you're starting a business, like, I knew my personal training, I knew a lot of that stuff.
Mhm.
There's always still more I'm learning, but learning the whole business back end
Mm,
also took a lot of time to figure out, like, I designed my website and,
yeah.
I mean, setting up your social media, like, whatever it is, it takes a lot of time, and it's also a lot of learning.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
it was hard to balance that all,
Mm,
to try to balance, like, setting up this business, like, finding some new clients to start with while still homeschooling my kids and doing everything. So it has been a bit of a teeter-totter, but what I ended up doing was I did put my 3 young oldest one is still homeschooled, and we may transition. We take it year to year what we're
yeah.
gonna do with them, but I was feeling really burnt out, with homeschooling. I love homeschooling
Yeah.
and the benefits, and we still homeschool our oldest, and we may homeschool again, but especially one child of mine was pretty, like, stressful,
Mm,
and so but it's coming back and tuning into, like, "Okay, what do we need to do for this year?" And
yeah.
set up some of these different things, and I still my family is my most important thing, even though it's really easy for me to, like, pour into my business and figure all this business stuff out and work with clients. I love doing that, but
Mhm.
my family has to come first. So I do have to remind myself of that. But it's continually just like those seasons of working out that we were talking about, these seasons in our business. What do I need to pour more time into? What do I need to let go for the season to balance it all? Because most important, and exactly what I do is I need to take care of myself and my health too. If I'm
Yeah.
burning myself out doing this business, this is not gonna be good. Yeah, absolutely, and my daughter, she's my oldest, she's 16, and, they start to see more and you can talk to them more,
Yeah.
and she has seen me pour into this business, but she has also seen me go for walks or some type of exercise most day, making time for friends, making time for
Yeah.
these other things, and then she's also gotten to see my business move
Mm.
forward. I have a podcast and I have people reaching out to me, like, someone asked me about sponsoring their shoes, so they sent them to me. I didn't like them, so I'm not gonna sponsor
Yeah.
them. But she got to see, like, how cool is that? Like, you
Yeah.
got a pair of tennis shoes. This other doctor sent me his book, like,
Yeah.
and so she gets to see the success, but also see that I am trying to balance my life with my business and that I am trying to keep my family at the forefront, but I can still do that. I can still keep my family first and I can still be successful.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think, keeping that priority at the forefront, the big part of that is just speaking that and putting it out there and not feeling ashamed to say, my family comes before my business. And sometimes that means I'm not working hours you'd expect me to work. Or, that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur and having that freedom is the ability to say no. But that can also be the hard part to implement that and to really put your family first and say no to those things that are not bad things, but they're not in alignment with what your goals are of making your family the number one thing.
Yeah, and I feel like it can be really hard when you're first starting a
Mm,
business. Like, I didn't feel like I was good because you want to increase your opportunities, you want to try everything, do everything, and it's almost like you might have to do a little bit of that. But how can you sort of bring that in so you can still have that balance
yeah,
too?
definitely. What advice do you have for a new entrepreneur who's also a mom listening to this that's struggling in that department?
Yeah, I think having patience. I mean, my business has been slow growing, but it keeps growing each
Mm,
year. And I also have the benefit of we're not relying on my income. We can live off of my husband's income. So that takes like a lot of
mhm.
pressure off of it, even though I still want it to grow. I still want it to be profitable. But I haven't had that pressure where like, oh man, I got to make 5,000 or 10,000 this
Mhm.
month or we can't pay for our
Yeah.
house. So having that pressure off helps. But it comes back to figuring out what's gonna work for your business, and for me, it's been a little trial and error, like, I've tried social media, I mean, I still use that, but had more success on Facebook than Instagram, but
Mm,
I had to figure out how to work both of
yeah,
those. Then, um, well, maybe blogging. And then I started my podcast, and my podcast for me has been the thing that has helped the most. And then really just trying different things, learning how to do them
yeah.
well, and then figuring out what works for you and know that it's a process because it's going to be a little bit different for
Yeah,
everybody.
definitely. I think that is huge. And like you said, that trial and error of figuring out what works and then also what you like doing. Because I know for me, I
Yes.
went through that where I was in my real estate business. It was like trying to figure out what was authentic to me, but then also what still filled my cup. And I went through a transition after having my twins where I felt like the content that I was creating before having my twins and the content that I was creating after, it wasn't in alignment anymore. You know, what once worked for my business, it no longer was working for me. And that's when I started to feel that dread, and it wasn't fun. And that's when I started losing that passion for it. And I was like, okay, I am not going to force myself to continue to do something that once worked, it once felt good, but it doesn't anymore. And that's okay. And that's growth. I mean, that's what it's all about, is like acknowledging that and figuring out what works now, what works in this season. And I think, if I didn't listen to that and I continued to put out content that I thought I was supposed to because it was what once worked, I never would have gotten to the point of creating this community of Mom Boss Central came about because I had to reinvent myself. I had to like go back and think about, what did I like about that before? What doesn't work now? And what can I do to kind of bridge that gap? Um, and I think that was just so insightful for me to see the growth, even though it felt like failure at the time.
Yeah, and it can be really hard watching other
Mm,
people and seeing what other people have done and been successful, or feel like you have to use this words in your
yeah,
marketing or different things
yeah,
like that. Like, I think I tried out some of that, and then it's like you do it, and I'm like, this like isn't me, and this doesn't
yes,
even sound
yeah,
right. Like, what am I
yeah,
doing? But coming back to what sounds good to you, I mean, learning some marketing principles, learning some basic
mhm.
things, but making sure that it is
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I think that in this era of like Chat GPT, it's so interesting because sometimes I use Chat GPT, don't get me wrong. I love it. I think it can be an awesome resource. But I also know that I am going to use that to create content, not use it to create my content, if that makes sense. Like I'll take ideas from it
Yes.
and create my own version, but if I copy and paste out of ChatGPT, that's not authentic to me and what I want to put out there. And I went through that where I tried to use I got really specific in my prompts and it was giving stuff that was good, but it still wasn't my voice and my tone. And I think at the end of the day, that just wasn't authentic, and I didn't feel good about putting that content out because I knew it wasn't what I truly wanted to say. So I take the extra time, but it feels good when I put it out there, and if it doesn't perform, that's on me, and if it does perform, that's on me too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I use Chat GPT too some, and a lot of times it's like, "Rewrite
Yeah.
this," or I'm like, "Take out the fluffy
Yes.
words." Like, what are these words? People don't
That's what
even
I
use
say.
those
Can you
words.
make it sound less
Yeah.
formal and but still fun? Like that's my thing, is like it always comes up with
Yeah.
words and I read it and I'm like, I would never use that word. My husband will always say like, I know you didn't write this because I've never heard you say that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So that's like I have to
Yeah.
watch for that to be really cautious. But I think the other thing I realized with that social media, evolution before and after having my kids was how much identity I tied to what I was creating and putting out there in my business. Like it almost felt like this, I don't want to say identity crisis because that's so dramatic for like what it was, but I did feel like my identity in making these reels where I was dancing and doing that style of reel was no longer authentic. And I was like, well, now what? Because who am I now? What kind of content can I create now? That's who I felt like I was fun. I had so much energy. And then I had my twins, and I was like, I do not have the energy to dance around and line up my lip syncing to this video. Like, that's not going to work for this season of life that I'm in. And that's okay. But it did feel like I was losing that piece that I loved and had so much fun with, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I had my Instagram like was
Hmm.
growing, but it was like I never quite saw the traction in like converting to clients on it. So now I just cross post a little bit. I use my Facebook group. My podcast is my main thing and then sort of feeds into my
Yeah.
Facebook group. And that feels better to me where I can share my podcast, where I can ask questions like, what's your healthy habit for the week? That's like more of a thing
Yeah.
in a Facebook group. Um, and that has felt like a better fit to me too, because I think it can be hard trying to do some of these things, like knowing reels like this
Yeah.
go better, but if that's not going to help your business, if it doesn't feel good, and sometimes, like you said, I mean, it takes a lot of like brain energy to be creative and to come up with some of those or find the
Yeah.
trending audio or do all those other things. And is that worth that? Is that what feels good? Is that making a difference or an impact in people's lives? Or is that causing them to just scroll and waste the
Yeah,
time on their
yeah, and I
phone?
think what you said too about well, there's 2 parts. The one part is, like, even though you were growing followers, it wasn't resulting in more business. I think it's so easy to get caught up in that, in this social media world that we're in. It's so easy to say, "Oh my gosh, I wanna get more views," but, like, are more views doing anything for your engagement or for, like, your ROI for
Mhm.
all the time that you spent on that content? And I'm the first one to admit, like, there's seasons where I'm putting out content because it feels good and it's not necessarily directly impacting my business. And on the flip side of that, I don't regret it because it's then helped me get clarity on what kind of content I want to post. I think I've narrowed down my audience too. And like sometimes it's a season of weeding out the people that are maybe following me that aren't in alignment with what I'm putting out anymore because I have transition from a lot of real estate content to mom content to content for mom entrepreneurs. So,
Mhm.
you know, sometimes when I was going through that and seeing losing followers, it was hard. But then on the flip side, I also saw my engagement increase because the content that I was putting out was in alignment with my vision. So the people that I wanted there, that I wanted to consume my content, were starting to get more involved, more engaged. At the same time, I was losing, you know, followers, and that was okay. You know, that's something I think we need to remember is like, what's the purpose of putting out this content? Is it for fun? Because that's okay if it is. If you're trying to get more business from it, is that what's actually happening? And are we doing it in a way that makes sense for our ideal client or our avatar?
Yeah, absolutely. That's all great points to bring up. And that's what we have to think about when we're figuring out if something works. We have to give it enough
Yeah.
time too, because sometimes people take a while
Yeah.
to convert, but really knowing how to work it, trying it out, feeling if it feels good
Yeah.
to you, and taking the results for what they are as
Definitely.
feedback.
Yeah, and I like what you said too about cross posting and using Facebook because for me, like I like Instagram the best. That's like my go-to when I create a reel, I'm creating it for Instagram. And then I'll post it on TikTok. But I
Mhm.
know truly I don't have the time or energy at this point with where I'm at with creating everything to create something that's going to perform well on Instagram and then create something different that's going to perform well on TikTok. Like I won't put out the content that I want to if I got stuck in the nitty-gritty of it. So I think someone listening maybe needs a reminder. It's better to just start doing something than to try to get it perfect for every platform or to try to figure out the perfect reel to speak to your audience because what I've learned is the more time I spend on a video, the less well it performs, right? Like the one I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be the one. It's perfect. I spent hours on it." It's like my lowest viewed, lowest engaged. The one I spend 5 minutes driving in the car, like, while my husband's driving, recording a video, that one is the one that does the best. So, someone listening needs that reminder today to just go post a video. It doesn't matter what it is, but just start somewhere and start taking action, and eventually it gets easier and you figure it out, but you have to start by doing something.
Yeah, and I love how you brought that up. So for me, my Facebook group is
Mhm.
my main thing. So just like you, I'm making content
Mhm.
for that, but I will share it to my Instagram. So if you can focus on that one
Mhm.
platform, And you can cross post or share to the other, but it's easier if you're just focused on
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
one.
definitely. So to go back to like how you got into the business and you're still managing all of it, what tips do you have for someone who is struggling to find time to be healthy and to prioritize exercise, or, fun time to not be sitting on your butt while you're working?
Yeah, I think, and this is what tell my health coaching clients, but it's like with everybody, is like
Mm,
start small. Like figure out what that is you need to do for your health because everyone has to take care of their health. So what do you need to focus
mhm,
on right now? Is that something as simple as drinking
mm,
more water? Because that's like one easy thing I see people when they start getting hydrated enough, they're like, I have more
yeah,
energy. Like, and it's a
yeah,
really easy thing. So is it drinking more water? Is it getting some protein in the morning so you're not starting that blood sugar
mm,
roller coaster? Is it like doing 10 minutes of strength training or like those
yeah,
dance videos or yoga? Like figuring out that small thing that you need to do for your health. And you use that same idea for those
mm,
other areas. Like, how can I have more fun? Like, if I listen to music, that generally cheers me up, but I don't always think to do it. Do I need to be intentional about just turning on some music? Like, maybe when I'm eating lunch, I'm not going to be on my phone or my computer. I'm just going to
yeah,
eat it. Like, take a pause during the
I
day.
love that.
And then same thing for your business. Like what do you need to just really
Mhm,
focus on? And if you continue to reevaluate and continue to keep
mhm,
things small, because when we make it too big, our brain alarm goes off like this is dangerous, this isn't safe, it's comfortable what I'm doing. So if we can make it
mhm,
small so that we can do it and we don't have that fire alarm going off, and then we're starting to stay consistent with it. And then we're starting to build
yeah,
success and we're like, hey, maybe I
yeah,
can do this because I am being successful. Even if it seems so small, some people will be like, oh, well, that's like, I should be doing that already. Like, but you're not, and
yeah.
it's okay. Like, let's start small, build some success, and
Yeah,
then
I
build
think
from
that's
there.
huge what you just said. I know that I have put myself in that box of, oh, I should be doing it. So I'm not going to give myself the space I need to actually start doing it. And I feel like it's that shame spiral that like creeps in of like, oh, I should do it. So I'm going to downplay how important it is. But really, when I start thinking about it, then I like feel guilt and shame that I wasn't doing it in the first place. So I think like if that's where you're at, to really acknowledge it's okay that you're not doing it, but just start making those changes that you can so that it feels doable and that it is something you're actually implementing instead of just talking about as if it's already done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Start small,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
seriously. Well, Michelle, this has been such a great conversation. I am so grateful that you are on the show and part of the Mom Boss Central community. I think that everything you've shared is just really tangible stuff, super applicable, and I'm excited to start small and work on implementing, healthier practices. So, for someone who wants to connect with you and learn more about you, where can they find you and what do you offer?
Yeah. So, first of all, check out my podcast, Healthy Beyond 40. And even if you're not 40, it's still just going to go back to those basics of how can we be healthy
Mm,
on the inside? How can we get out of this diet culture, keep things simple, and focus on our nutrition, our exercise in ways that feel good for us mentally? So, we're not, stuck in the trap of
mm,
weighing ourselves all the time, tracking all of our food, but stepped into a place where I can have a better relationship with food. And this is something I can keep doing and something I want my kids to
yeah.
see me doing because I don't want them to see me following diets and obsessing about the scale. We want to also be healthy for our children so we can start to instill those habits in them. And I do online personal training, I do online health coaching, and I have a course, Healthy Inside and Out. So there's lots of different ways to work with me and for lots of
Love
different
it. Well, we
budgets
will
too.
link that below in the show notes so people can get connected. And thank you so much for your time, for your insight. Again, just so happy to have you as part of the Mom Boss Central community and to hear how these other mom entrepreneurs are able to start small and implement healthier habits.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Mom Boss Central. I hope you found inspiration, encouragement, and maybe even a few new strategies to rock your mom boss journey. Remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together. And don't forget to share the love with your fellow mom bosses. make sure to join the community at mombosscentral.com. It's completely free and a space to connect with like-minded women. All you have to do is sign up and start connecting. Until next time, keep pursuing your passions and living authentically. We're so happy to have you as part of the Mom Boss Central community.